Okay, so you should have ended up with these numbers that I have in red. So we took in each column and we multiplied by 2 to figure out what the next column was. So we're going to use this information that we just did to plot some different data. So here it says, use the information from activity 1 to draw a graph of the relationship between the distance around the thumb and the distance around the wrist. So one thing that I do want you to understand is we are used to X's and Y's, and this line that goes right here is always our X. Well, they're actually using T. So I'm gonna do a table, and I would use the one that's there, but it's really skinny and it's hard to write in, so I'm gonna draw a bigger table. Okay, so we've got where we would normally have an X, both sides X, Y, we're gonna put a T. Okay, and then for our Y's, where we would normally have a Y, we're using W. So where they're pulling that information is, here's our T's and here's our W's. So the nice thing is they actually just kept them in the same order. So really we're just gonna take and transfer these two columns down into my table down here. And I'm just doing this to make it easier so we're not having to look at so much information. Okay, so I had 0 through 5 for my T's. Add another box. And for my W's, I had 0 and then multiples of 2. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, so we went through and we did that. So we went ahead and wrote our table to write our ordered pairs. So our ordered pairs, in other words, when we look at this one right here, it is 0, 0. So when we plot that, remember it's always over, then up or down. So we're gonna go over to 0 so we don't get a move from here. Up to 0, we're gonna stay right there. So there's our first plot. Okay, our next one would be 1, 2. So over to 1, up to 2, put a dot. Okay, so that one's plotted. The next one, over to 2, up to 4. Over to 2, up to 4. Okay, and then 3, 6, over to 3, up to 6. So you can see that there's a pattern going on. If you look at your dots, you can see that pattern. So you can either continue that pattern or continue to do the coordinate sets. So over to 4 up to 8, and then over to 5 up to 10. So there's all of my points. And if you notice, what do you notice about that line? So what do you notice about the graph that we just did? Well, it creates what type of a line if I were to connect these dots? It creates a perfect line. So that's one thing that you have to understand about direct variation is going to create a perfectly straight line. The other thing that always happens with direct variation is your line will always cross through the origin or 0, 0. So those are the two qualifications for if you're looking at a line. It has to be straight and it has to cross through 0, 0 in order for it to be considered direct variation. So this picture that we see is a relationship that we call direct variation. You can also write it out as an equation to describe that the relationship between T and W. And the standard equation when you're working with X's and Y's is Y equals K, and our K, which we'll learn in a future part of this lesson, is going to stand for the constant, and X. So the way that we're going to go through and do this is we have to figure out what that K is. Well, K is the same as the slope. So if we were to pick or to look at our graph and identify what the slope is, remember that's our rise and our run. So for now, we can count boxes. Our rise was 2 and our run was 1. So that would be 2 over 1 or just 2. Okay, and that's a positive slope. So our equation, instead of Y and X, we used T and W. This was our X and this was our Y. So wherever we had Y, we're going to put our W. So our W equals our constant, or our slope was 2 times T. Okay, so the wrist is 2 times the thumb is basically what we're doing, is understanding this statement and writing it out as an algebraic equation. Okay, so we're going to practice some more of these. So go ahead and flip to your next page of your